are back. This is Carrie Cassidy, Project Camelot Whistleblower Radio, and we are on the air with Scott Stevens. Scott, are you still with me?
You betcha. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, very good. So we were in the midst of talking about how you sort of have come from being sort of a nuts and bolts weatherman to somebody who really is able to not only look at the clouds and determine what kind of weapon is being used, why something is why a weather report might be completely off. And I'm looking on your website and discovering all these incredible photographs you have and the way you've actually explained it to people in a very simple fashion. So I do encourage people to go to your website, which is Weatherwars.Info. But to continue the story, so basically you're talking about looking up at the sky as a young man and also being given a microscope. You're basically focusing on Orion and I assume, you know, the night sky, but also the weather patterns, whatever. But at some point you become a weather person and you actually find yourself forecasting wrong. And then you look deeper, which is something that a lot of people are not doing, especially who predict the weather. Is that right?
Yeah, I had, in '97, after been on the air for like 10 years, I was given a book, The Celestine Prophecy. And it sat in a spare room for about 8-9 months, and I finally picked it up and read it. And I was like, holy cow. There's this whole other reality of subtle energies, of the ether, of spirit connectedness. And it sparked something in me that turned into a wildfire. And then around 99, 2000, I was interested in Richard Hoagland's work at the Enterprise mission, and so I was into his work, because of my astronomy background. And then 9/11 happened, and I started visiting What Really Happened and Jeff Rense and some of these other sites, and something kept coming up in those topics, and that was chemtrails. And so I would see the pictures of jet trails, and I'm like, okay. Honestly, Carrie, it probably took 2 years of reading those articles, and what I didn't have, and what was a motive, I'm like, whoa, WTF, why would they be doing this? I wasn't seeing the big picture. And but also at that time I was researching free energy from the vacuum, Thomas Bearden's work with electromagnetic motors and zero-point energy and scalar. And then on Tom Bearden's side, one of his sidebars was Soviet weather engineering. Well, that piqued my interest because this was probably 2000, 2001. And sometime, the winter of 98, 99, the guys back in D.C. at the NCEP, National Centers for Environmental Protection, were just blowing these forecasts. These winter storms are coming ashore, and the models were failing, and their interpretation of the models was failing. I mean, it was embarrassing how bad the guys in D.C. were busting these Pacific storms. And I'm a good weatherman. I mean, I'm really good. I would get called in by the chief meteorologist when I was working in Tulsa. I was working the morning shift at that time, and I would come in and completely rework Gary's forecast, and he would be livid at me because I'm saying, yes, I see your point, Gary, but I think this will happen. Well, he called the executive producer in once and then had the guy under me who was doing weekends break down the stats to see who was actually right more often. And on a 7-day forecast, you've got a high and low, so you have 14 periods. Out of those 14 periods, I was beating Gary in 11 of them, and not by a little bit either. So, I mean, what I had learned was that there's an intuitional aspect of forecasting, and that takes precedence over what the models say. I just got to learn to feel what was going on. And something happened in the late 90s. And I just, red bells were going off. I'd forecast 4 to 6 inches worth of snow across the Snake River Plain. It'd be 2 in the morning. I'm like, waiting for the snow to start. Come on, snow. You got to start now because the storm will be gone by 10 in the morning, and I want to be right. And I would see in the calm ahead of these storms openings, warm wormholes in the infrared imagery. They would just open up. And then I would go outside, and I was able to see the stars through the storm. And I'm like, this is not right. What's happening? And at 2 in the morning, I'm hearing these jets. I'm like, what are jets doing in eastern Idaho at 2 a.m.? I mean, commercial jets. That's just not right, especially on a north-south bound. And what are they doing from Salt Lake to Missoula at 2 a.m.? That doesn't happen. And so I'd go back and look at the satellite imagery, and these were warm holes showing up in the infrared imagery, meaning that they're warming the tops of these storms, and in doing so, taking away the convective ability, the updraft of the storms, and thereby you don't get the snow crystallization formation. And if you don't get the snow crystallization, then the storm just flies on by. What I did.
But why were they doing this? Do you know?
Know.
Have you delved in deep enough to where you actually know the method to their madness? I know the diabolical side, but I mean, in other words, why don't they want it to snow, let's say in Idaho, but they'll let it rain torrentially in, I don't know, let's say Texas?
Yeah.
In other words, they're actually doing this.
Well,
so what is the method to their madness as far as that goes?
What they were doing was creating drought. It was.
But why? Why would they want to do that?
And see, this is where I had to go with Tom Bearden, is that we were dealing with the Russians tweaking American weather, and that American scientists were just so ignorant of what the Russians termed energetics that they didn't see it happening, that they didn't know it was happening. But I struggled with that because I would see these energy impulses showing up in the sky in the formation of the clouds, but then the jets would fly through them, precisely marking off the geometry of these energy imprints in the cloud patterns. So I'm like, whoever is doing it, they're doing it in tandem. The jets are working as energy signatures, the edges of the rippling, or the holes that pop in the clouds. The jets know precisely and are probably directing where the directed energy weapons are focused at.
Okay, but nonetheless, is what you're saying, I'm just guessing here, but in essence, those jets are not flown by Russians, okay?
No.
So we're fast forward to a place in time where even if they didn't have a grip in the beginning, they got one. And then they are manipulating weather themselves, and we're talking about even here in the United States, our government, the secret government, whatever you want to call it. And then what are they doing with it? Because in a sense, it's like it's all energy. Everything is energy.
Everything.
So in a sense, they're taking that energy and then they are sending it off somewhere. They might drop a little over Texas, let's say, but then they're actually sending it where? Sending it to Russia, sending it to China, causing, for example, the Sichuan earthquake or whatever it is. Is that what you see going on there?
If Bearden is right, then there are little and what I'm seeing in the skies and photographing with my high-def cameras is that there are probably over the course of the day tens of thousands of gradual tweakings of the skies just over this country. Tens of thousands of times.
So it's an amazing thing. And so once in a while they might even blow it, right?
Sure. And I think that's why they require the trails. They need these particles up there so that they can see them drift. They can see the edges of the influences of their warming, of their cooling, of when they establish a rippling pattern. It's like speed bumps in the sky. So you slow down a channel of the air maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 knots. But that has an effect 3 days from now, 1,200 miles downstream.
Yeah, the butterfly effect.
Exactly. And you always work with what's coming. And so you just gradually massage. And if you need something to happen in 24 days' time, like the Olympics, then you start playing with the wave train way ahead of time. So you get the
that's
desired
very
work.
interesting.
Yes, this thing is so orchestrated, it is so well planned that it is worth $2 trillion to buy the planes, outfit them with the chemicals, because if you can control the planet's weather, there's not much that you can't do. And if there's one thing that these people are addicted to, it is power.